Hey guys, my name is Archronos, and welcome back to my Last of Us React. This is of course episode 5, Endure and Survive. I'm looking forward to seeing this episode actually. There is a great deal of meaning behind this phrase that they've used for the episode title. Endure and Survive is a phrase that comes from Ellie's Savage Starlight comics that she enjoys reading in the games. So I'm very keen to see why they've waited till episode 5 to use one of the most important phrases. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. Must be another flashback, is it? This seems like a resistance city. No, this seems like a survival city that was doing fine and then got overrun by like some sort of militia, like a resistance group that didn't like how the city was being run and took it over. So Henry and Sam of last week there, they seem to have like a quiet way of communicating with each other.
Did it feel good? Betraying your neighbors to Fedra?
I was right. This is like a...
Did it make you feel better?
Kathleen's leading some sort of resistance that's taken over Fedra.
Where is Henry? I guess they don't know. Kill them.
He's with Edelstein.
He's still in the city, okay? I want our people going door to door until we find him.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. How long do you think we should wait? Should we wait a day or two? Should we wait a week?
I did pick up on Perry having allegiance problems with Kathleen during
We're putting them on trial.
during the conversation there.
No, we are not really putting them on trial. When you're done, burn the bodies. It's faster.
Perry did a very, very subtle like eye raise while Kathleen was talking to the prisoners, suggesting that he doesn't fully trust her or believe in her the mission path that she's leading them on. So I can see some sort of insubordination or possibly a change of allegiance coming there where he may even help our survivors. So this takes place just minutes before the end of last week's episode. Looks like they're about to stumble in on Joel and Ellie. If he crunches on glass here, we know where they are. Oh no, this must be the other guy that the prisoners were talking about.
Well, he saw a lot. Nothing I can do about that now.
He's scared because you're scared.
I get the sense they don't know each other for very long, which gives me the impression that this is not far behind episode 4. Ten days later. So this will be the morning of the day that they finally catch up with Joel and Ellie. We know from last week that Kathleen eventually finds this hideout of theirs because we saw her shining the torch on the drawings on the wall. She came up through the roof shaft last week. I would say most probably, especially since he would have been a non-compliant member of their society who was not conforming to their new regime. You saw Kathleen's hatred for Henry and Sam, so understandable. They probably would have killed the old man as well. Nice putting the hero mask on him. It's a very nice way of showing how young and naive Sam is. He's much younger than Ellie is. This is from poor memory now, but I'm pretty sure he was depicted as being 14 in the game, I think. Barely 14. Our heroes have arrived. Henry and Sam were just over the road when all this happened. I wonder, did he see the Brian kill from there? No, he didn't. So the laundrette was going to be their escape plan, and Joel and Ellie's arrival messed that up. Whoops. You get the impression there Sam has not been given a gun very often. He was very fascinated with it.
Joel.
Joel's already weighing up the 7 ways this can play out. There's a lot of tremendous facial acting. They're speaking volumes with their face and not saying anything.
Who are you?
My name's Henry. It's my brother Sam.
How old is he?
He's 8.
Cool.
He's only 8 years old
I'm
here.
Ellie.
That's much younger than he was in the games. Well, yes and no.
But you're not Fedra.
No. Worse. I'm a collaborator.
Collaborator with Fedra?
Haven't heard that in a long time.
So how are we getting out?
There's Joel getting afraid of bonding with people again. We know that's going to be a recurring issue with Joel.
Down.
How do we get across, Sam? I don't know whether he wants him to be involved or only Sam knows the answer. The tunnels.
Boom.
Kansas City has a subway?
The federal guy that I worked with told me that it's clean. Completely clean. They cleared it out. All of it.
When?
We know that's not the case.
3 years ago.
We already know from last week
If
the
it gets
super
bad
infected
down
is down
Turn
there.
around and run right back out the same way we came.
Oh, that's your great plan?
This should be it. You ready?
Get your gun out.
If we're going down into the maintenance tunnels already, this is a rapidly sped up timetable. What a great claustrophobic area.
No.
This looks like a really attractive area for kids to hang out. Looks like a safe area for kids. If this is what I think it is, things could be about to get pretty dark.
I heard about places like this.
It is.
People went underground after outbreak day.
Savage Starlight.
No way! I love these!
Awesome. So this is all like a little underground community. It's owned by a guy called
So cool.
Isaiah.
Of the
He had his own little community of
and
survivors down here.
endure and
Survive.
Exactly telling you the truth before. And about me not killing someone.
He killed somebody close to Kathleen.
Sam, he got sick. Leukemia. There was one drug that worked. And, whoa, big shock. There wasn't much left of it. And it belonged to Fedra.
So he became a turncoat.
Gave them something big.
Oh, he gave up.
the leader of the resistance movement in Kansas City.
He gave up Isaiah? I'm not sure if that's who Kathleen's brother's going to turn out to be, but Isaiah was the name of the leader of this place. The one thing that's a little bit unclear, Henry seemed very unfamiliar with this place, suggesting he'd never been there before. But he seemed like he knew Isaiah very well. Is it going to turn out to be Isaiah? I don't know. Great way of tying these two stories together, though. Fantastic.
Michael told me that this wasn't a room at all.
Michael has to be your
He
brother.
says,
Based on the
"On
way
this
Perry's
we're together."
listening.
You did.
So Henry didn't kill Michael directly. But we know that Fedra have executed people before.
Good.
So it is entirely possible that Fedra executed Michael while he was in captivity. Because Fedra's policy is if you're dead, you can't get infected. You may not wish to walk down the middle of the street in the suburbs.
A million more times, and he
Yeah, I was waiting on it. So you already saw somebody break off. He knows that Joel's went behind the houses as well, so he knows Joel is coming.
Please don't do it. Please.
You had an option to get out, old man. But Kathleen?
Hold them where they are. We're almost there.
She are here already told them. Kathleen's men are here already. Which means... Run! Armored truck time.
There's cars everywhere.
Fantastic. Good shooting, son. He's just gonna shoot him.
It ends the way it ends.
Come on, Joel. I believe last week's visitor has arrived. That's a few infected. What an incredible set piece they have turned this into. Oh boy, we are in for a treat. Super infected time. It'll take you about 9,000 bullets. We've all been there. Good night, Perry. Remember, clickers can't see, so the clicker doesn't know that Ellie's in here. It does now. I love this Guardian Overwatch shit that they're doing here. That's some tremendous shooting. Being able to take out the clicker while she's holding it. Excuse me? The super infected seem to have command over the infected there. He seemed to tell them all to go. You notice when he roared at the end there, they all held out. This is all so lovely. Henry and Sam were just everything I hoped they would be. Are you even scared?
Do I not look scared?
Ellie's been really lovely here, communicating with him using the pad. I'm scared of ending up alone. You turn into a monster, is it still you inside? Sorry, buddy. What are you doing, Ellie? The really lovely, heartfelt gesture to try and make sure the little kid is not scared. Stay awake with me. The music's already creating a overbearing sense of futility. Ellie's gesture doesn't really mean anything, and I think secretly Ellie knows that as well. I think she came from the right place and just wanted to help him go to sleep.
Hey.
That was pretty bleak. Not really a lot of stuff you can say about the two deaths that happened there. A little kid and his big brother. Feel the punch in the heart, boy. I knew everything that was coming there, and it still sucked to see it. Jesus Christ. That was episode 5, Endure and Survive. A very moving episode this week. Definitely the closest I've come to actually shedding tears from we started. Very, very emotional episode where you found yourself bonding with characters very, very quickly and losing them pretty much straight away. Such is the nature of the Last of Us world. I have foretold this happening now for a few weeks. If you've been watching my react, I did not spoil that Henry and Sam would die, but I did warn several times that the writers of these games are not afraid to take risks that you don't typically see in this type of show and game world. Typically, when you have these kind of survival tales, you tend to get to know survivors and spend quite a lot of time with them. In The Last of Us, it's not uncommon to get to know somebody and just lose them just like that, which is akin to our real lives. As I said during the episode, I knew everything that was going to happen there, apart from twists where they changed what actually happened in the game. I couldn't have predicted that stuff, but where they kept to the storyboard of the game and followed the events of the game closely, I was in tune with everything that was happening, and I knew that Henry and Sam were going to die. Did I know it was going to be this episode? Probably, but there's nothing to say that it couldn't have happened next week, for example, but I knew there was a certainty that both of them would not be making it out of this season. So before I talk about pretty much the last 10 minutes of the episode, which is where we'll focus much of my react to this episode, I want to just talk briefly about some of the other stuff that I noticed here. The first thing was Sam's age, Sam being Henry's younger brother. In the games, Sam is barely 14. There is a conversation where Sam triumphantly says that he is just turning 14, and Henry does this weird thing where it's hard to describe. I'll show you the scene in a moment, but it's like where you have two people who know each other very, very well, and then a third person who doesn't know the two people, and if one of those two people says something that the second person knows to be a lie, they will make a quip as if to say, "Are you sure everything you're saying is correct?" There is a very distinct moment like that in the game where Sam says that he's turned 14 or almost there, and Henry kind of reacts as if to go, "Are you sure you're close to that age?" As if to suggest that he's not 14 or hasn't got to the point of turning 14 just yet. He kind of he gives the suggestion that he could be barely over 12, like he's just turned 13 and is nowhere near 14. The reason for all of this is Sam is very, very keen to bond with Ellie. He wants to show Ellie that he has something in common with her, that he is very close to being the same age as her, and that they should be good friends. And he's more or less, he's not acting like an adult, but he doesn't want to feel like the child in the room. So he's puffing out his chest almost and trying to act more grown up than he is. And Henry kind of knocks the wind out of his sails a little bit.
So, how old are you?
Me? 14. How old are you?
The same?
Oh, you're 14, huh?
I'm close.
All right.
So the decision there to make Sam a much younger child was interesting. So they essentially took 5 years off Sam's age there, made him 8 years old instead of 13, which made the emotional loss of losing Sam much harder, I think, than if they'd kept him 13. I want to make it clear here, losing a child at any age is an immensely tragic, terrible thing that any family should never have to go through. Any family member at all. Losing anybody for that matter is a terrible thing, but losing a young child, it doesn't matter what age they are, it's just a terrible, terrible event. And the fact that it happened the way it did is just awful. I will talk more about that as we reach that event. Another change that they made this week was the decision to have Sam be hearing impaired. Sam is not hearing impaired in the game. Here he was, and it introduced some complexities in both the way Henry communicates with his own brother and also introducing two characters that don't know either of the two boys in Ellie and Joel here, getting to know them, because Sam is not able to confidently communicate with strangers. He does so through his brother Henry, at least at first, until he develops some trust, and he was quick to do that with Ellie and get to know her very, very quickly. But it was a very interesting setup that they did there, where you had two characters getting to know two other characters, but they had to do so through only one of them. And I thought it was a very endearing way to get us to bond with Sam by showing that his life is not reduced in any way by being hearing impaired. And he's an incredible kid and someone that you bond with very, very quickly, as I think most viewers found this week. I obviously have the weight of what we just saw just heavily resting on me at the moment. So it's not easy to talk about that little kid. So back in the city, we had a little bit of a time skip backwards just to get to know some of the background information between mainly Kathleen and Henry, because we didn't really understand why Kathleen had a full-on obsession with trying to track down, and although it was not explicitly said, she wanted to kill Henry, and we didn't have an understanding of why that was last week. We had the subtle suggestion that Henry had done something to her group, and the way they managed to both explain the nemesis relationship there, but also weave it seamlessly into the lore of the game was really, really well done. So the main reason why Henry was a foe of Kathleen here was Fedra had managed to clean up the streets of Kansas, and in the past 15 years, they had forced all of the infected underneath the city. Wasn't explained how they actually did that, but they managed to get them all underneath the city, and we're led to believe that Kansas was now a clean city, if that's the correct phrasing, where we have a city that has no more infected in it. Kathleen, firstly, was a big figurehead in a resistance movement who opposed Fedra and didn't want to be under their regime, because as we know, Fedra are more or less an evil organization. Fedra basically are like the government in an outbreak situation, taking drastic, heavy-handed approaches to containing people and killing them off if they have any signs of infection, or imprisoning them and taking them away from their families. So it's easy to believe here that you would have some sort of resistance movement building up very quickly against something like that. And Kathleen was a member of one of these resistance movements in Kansas City. Henry and his brother Sam were just two boys growing up in this city, and Sam developed leukemia, and there was a drug which Henry and Sam had access to in the fallout of the developed world when the whole infection broke out. But in order to maintain access to that drug and ensure that Sam got better and was able to recover from his leukemia, Henry was forced to become a collaborator with Fedra and feed Fedra information on how the resistance movement was working. We more or less glean from that Henry and Sam were probably part of the resistance, and that Henry was operating in a double agent capacity where he was working for the resistance and working for Fedra at the same time, because he would have needed access to the resistance to get the information to give to Fedra. What essentially happens is Henry passes off information to Fedra about Kathleen's brother Michael, and Fedra are able to capture Michael as a result of this information, and that's the last contact that Kathleen essentially has with her brother. She sees him in what we're led to believe is just one visit in prison, and she never sees him again after that. So what we are led to believe happened here is that Fedra most likely killed Michael while he was in prison. He probably got infected. It never actually spells it out as to what happened to Michael, but if we fill in the blanks of what we already know about Fedra and how they behave, Michael most probably got infected and Fedra killed him. So because Kathleen has taken over Kansas and dealt with Fedra, she's jumping over the middleman there to get to Henry, because she sees Henry as being responsible for Michael's death. So that's why she's hell-bent on capturing Michael, and will most probably kill him when she captures him, which is essentially how the events actually played out. So before we talk about the culmination of events that brought everything together, firstly, we need to briefly talk about how it actually went down in the game. When Joel and Ellie catch up with Henry and Sam, they more or less stumble on each other. Joel climbs into an abandoned apartment building, believing wrongly that it is abandoned, and walks in on Henry and Sam, and there's a huge confrontation where they're going to kill each other. More or less the uncomfortable scene that you saw this episode open up with, where Henry and Sam confronted Joel and Ellie, and there's that uneasiness and back down as the two groups realize that they need to trust each other, and all of that played out exactly as it did there in the TV scenes that we saw.
Look!
Leave him alone.
Easy, son. Just take it easy.
It's all right. They're not the bad guys. Lower the gun. Man, you hit hard.
Yeah, well, I was trying to kill you.
Yeah, I thought you were one of them, too. Then I saw you. If you haven't noticed, they don't keep kids around. Survival of the fittest.
You're bleeding.
It's just nothing. I'm Henry. This is Sam.
And they start trusting each other and working together, and the consensus is that they need to help each other to get out of the city, to get where they're going. And during the night that they choose to escape, there is a run-in with the armored truck, which you kind of saw in the show there as well, with the truck that crashed into the house. There's a confrontation with that truck, and the truck chases them to the edges of the city, and they're forced to jump into the river to survive. That was the river that, if you recall, when Joel goes to break into the sniper's house, you'll see that he looked out to the side towards a Russian river with the bridge over the top of it. That was the river that they were given a nod to from the game. So when they got to the edges of the city, they got to that bridge. The bridge was heavily damaged, and they couldn't get across it because of blockages. The truck was closing in on them from behind. So Joel and Ellie are by themselves due to not a deliberate act of treachery, but how two groups that had just met would interact with each other. They would both kind of look after themselves. There is a kind of an event like that where Henry and Sam look after themselves, and Joel and Ellie are left by themselves again, even though they'd made this unwritten pact to work together.
All right, check it out.
We're good. Sam, let's go.
All right, kid, come on. There you go.
Come on.
Shit! Hurry, hurry. Ellie!
Got you.
Okay, we gotta get him up.
I'm sorry. We're leaving.
What? What's this bullshit?
Hey, now!
What the fuck, Henry?
Ellie does something particularly cool here.
We stick together.
Stupid, but cool. Joel and Ellie end up being pursued by this armored truck out to the bridge, and before it can close in on them, Joel and Ellie jump into the river to kind of get away and survive. You again have Ellie's inability to swim coming up there as well, where Joel doesn't want her to jump in, but they don't really have a choice, so they both jump into the river together.
How many bullets do you have left?
They're gonna kill us.
What other choice do we have?
We jump.
No, it's too high and you can't swim. I'll boost you up, you run past them.
You'll keep me afloat.
Ellie!
No time to argue.
Ellie!
Long story short, they managed to reach the outskirts of the city and the entrance to the maintenance tunnels. They fall in with Henry and Sam again, who more or less escaped the same way, and the unlikely alliance sort of becomes a closed pact again, and they agree to trust each other a little bit more this time. They make their way through the maintenance tunnels in the game, and there is a set piece in there involving infected, and they manage to get away from that, and they get to the suburbs then, which is the area of housing developments that we saw at the end there. And that's where they have the set piece with the sniper again. You would have seen me during the episode there almost predicting the arrival of the sniper, because I knew exactly where they were at the time. You'll recall when I was watching it that I remarked how dangerous it was that they were walking up the middle of the street. I was actually waiting for one of them to be shot. I thought that they were going to do a twist there where they were going to shoot Henry. I thought that was what his exit to the show was going to be, that he was going to get sniped there, and Sam, Ellie, and Joel would have been left together. But it didn't come to fruition, and they played out the sniping scene exactly as it did in the game. That is essentially what happens there as well. All four of them end up pinned down behind the truck, and Joel makes the decision to give the sniper the Joel Miller experience, and he breaks off from the group and goes down and deals with the sniper situation.
Oh, shit! Get out!
Fucking sniper. Did you see where it came from?
Somewhere down the street. All right, now, y'all stay here. Before you start, I need you guys to keep me busy. I'm gonna go around and see if I can't get the angle on him.
Okay. Be careful.
When he takes over the sniper nest, it's just a normal raider. The guy who Joel took the rifle off there at the end just seemed to be like an old man who was looking after his house, but he revealed he was one of Kathleen's men as well, and that he presumably was able to identify them through the rifle and radioed Kathleen that he had got them contained. So that's why he was taking repeated shots at the car to try and keep them behind it. And Joel had managed to get down to the house then, which was not part of his plan, and he ended up dying to Joel then, because he didn't want to go for the whole give up your rifle and leave within an hour. So he died to Joel there, and not before he had summoned Kathleen and Perry and the other mercenaries to that area. So when they get into the maintenance tunnels, they have an interaction with what is essentially a little resistance movement there, or the signs of one. You'll remember during the episode that I became apprehensive of an area that they'd reached in the maintenance tunnels, which was covered in kids' drawings everywhere. That's a really, really dark moment in the game, actually, because that is an abandoned resistance movement which has fallen to infected. The infected have taken it over and killed everybody that was inside it, or forced them to kill themselves. And there's a really, really dark moment in it where you're led to believe that young kids and the people who were looking after them are all dead. So it looked like the show was toying with going that direction, and then they pulled away from it. Again, we're in TV land here. We have to respect things are different. So kudos to them for managing to give that little nod to what was a dark scene without actually showing it. So you had this moment where the game veterans were all like sort of sitting forward in their chair getting ready for what was in there, and then it just never played out. So I liked how they handled that, the fact that they were conscious of what was behind those doors, but they pulled away from showing it. They just left it as like an unspoken thing. We're led to believe that everybody is dead there, but we didn't need to see the visual confirmation of it. I respected that a lot. I respected the fact that they managed to carefully tiptoe around hugely sensitive material there without needing to expose unknowing viewers to it for what is essentially a form of horror porn, almost, just for no reason. There was a nice nod to Isaiah as well. Isaiah was the leader of that faction that owned that maintenance tunnels resistance movement, and I thought right up until the revelation of who Kathleen's brother was, that's who Kathleen's brother was going to turn out to be, Isaiah, and that Henry had turned over Isaiah to Kathleen, but they pulled away from doing that as well. They nodded to the fact that Isaiah was a person in this world, because you saw the notice on the wall which mentioned Ish, which is Isaiah, but they seem to be staying away from that for now. Whether we're going to see that character later or not, we don't know. There is the possibility that we may, because it's not fully resolved in the game as to what actually happened to him. So something I thought was actually really cool was the fact that they toyed with the idea that Ish, or Isaiah, I refer to him, was Kathleen's brother, and then they revealed that it was Michael. I like the way they did it, where they made out that Isaiah or Ish was a character in the world, in both worlds of the game and the TV show, but they chose not to use him when they had the chance to use him for something really meaningful. And it'll be interesting to see if they actually do end up using that character later. So the actual confrontation there, where everything went down at the end, was quite interesting. So you have Joel separated from his group. He's up there with the sniper rifle, which is exactly how it played out in the game as well. And then you have Ellie, Henry, and Sam stuck down on the street. They did this really cool thing where they took the events from last week with the whole super infected operating underneath the city, and also us learning this week that the infected are stuck underneath the streets of Kansas. And they managed to weave that into a set piece that takes place in the suburbs in the game, where the armored truck arrives and you have to try and fend it off using the sniper rifle. You also have to try and keep the mercenaries from capturing Henry, Sam, and Ellie. And while all of this is going on, the infected end up being drawn from the surrounding area by the gunfire and the commotion, and they come in to see what's happening. So you end up with these two huge threats in one area converging on your friends, essentially, and you're stuck up there as the player in the window with a sniper rifle, and you have to try and snipe them all down. It's a very unique experience in the game. There isn't any other moment in the game that's like it. It's the only time that you end up doing like a fixed position sniping session, and the way they managed to bring this into the show while also using their own narrative of the infected being stuck underneath the streets and the super infected being down there as well, and having all of that like gush out onto the street like a volcano in the way that it did was marvelous. I love the fact that they used the armored truck. They had it crash into the house, and while we had the whole showdown between Kathleen, Harry, Henry, Sam, and Ellie, the truck sank into the ground, and then, as I said, you had this huge infected magma explosion all over the street with just hundreds of infected running out everywhere to overpower the mercenaries and create a situation that wasn't there before. That was really, really cool. I enjoyed that a lot. And it recreated the same scene from the game. The game is a lot less busy. There's, if I was to take a rough count, there's maybe 10 infected or so in the street, and there's probably about the same amount of mercenaries as well, roughly. So you have to try and find these all off by yourself. But in the show here, we ended up with this huge scene of pandemonium. There was infected everywhere. There was mercenaries everywhere. There was people getting pulled apart and eaten, converted everywhere. And Joel was barely able to see through all of the commotion to keep Ellie alive. He decided very, very quickly to dedicate his rifle presence to just solely on her. He didn't even care about Henry and Sam, and I can't blame him for that, honestly. Like, obviously, as viewers, we bond with all four of them, but Joel's primary concern is keeping Ellie safe and completing his courier mission, as it is, which he likes to make out still is his only primary aim, but he is very, very close with Ellie at this point, and he doesn't want to see her come to harm. So you can see why he closed in on full laser focus on that one task. And I love the different little set pieces that they did there in the middle of all of this. Like, you had Ellie doing the whole crawl through the streets on her arms, which was awesome. And then you had her dive into the Jeep by herself, and we had a clicker come in with her as well. Again, we saw that she's not fully relaxed with fighting infected yet. She got very, very scared while she was on her own, and the clicker's visual appearance made her suddenly move in horror, which is exactly what a clicker wants. I noted at the time of her getting attacked, clickers cannot see. They can hear much better than a human can, though. And when Ellie reacted in terror, the clicker was able to just zero in on exactly where she was and just closed in quickly across the Jeep to try and get to her, but she'd already got out and closed the door. So you had the clicker shut in there in the Jeep. Really, really awesome stuff. I love just like quick interactions like that with clickers, because you gotta imagine that those clickers are like huge makeup projects to try and get an actor ready for that kind of thing, and any sort of interaction with them at all I will take. So love that. And then you had the showdown then between Perry, Kathleen, and the three survivors, where Kathleen told Henry it was the end of the line, and Henry made the decision to sacrifice himself to get his brother out. So he told Ellie very, very quickly that that's what he wanted, that nothing else mattered but getting Sam out, and then he gave himself up. And you had the infected breakout then, and Perry got a very, very quick death there. I thought I would have loved to have seen more scenes with Perry. Jeffrey Pierce is a tremendous actor, and we were blessed with the limited amount of time that we had with him in the show, and losing him so quickly was a terrible shame. Could I say that he got a hero's death there? I'm not so sure. The super infected grabbed him and just pulled his head off. So did he get quite the heroic death that he deserved? We're going to say no to that one, but it was an incredible death nonetheless. I don't think there was many people who saw that episode and didn't remember that one key moment. And then we had Kathleen's death. I thought was remarkable, because the TV show is, they're kind of going the way of 28 Days Later a little bit, where they're giving the infected a lot more agility and prowess than what they have in the game. Runners in The Last of Us, which are infected that haven't yet become clickers. Clickers are the really slow ones with the cauliflower heads that make the weird sound, and they move quite slowly unless they know that there's prey in the room. Runners are like the younger version of those. They live up to their name by moving extremely quickly towards a prey, but they just like shuffle really, really quickly. Like if one's coming at you down a corridor, you still have a good bit of time to defend yourself. Here in the show, they seem to be making the decision to make them a little bit more valiant and quick, which is cool. And I thought the distinction was important here this week, especially because you had what looked like a very young child clicker that leaped at Kathleen and took her down and killed her. This is interesting because clickers in The Last of Us are like elders. They're like really, really old runners. So you have runners, and then you have clickers, and then you have super infected after that. So it's like the 3 tiers of infected. Clickers are quite old. They shuffle around and they don't really move that fast unless they know that there's prey in the room, and then they close in very, very quickly, and they were more faithful to how Clicker moves and engages prey in the museum encounter that they did in the first week than what they were here. I'm not sure whether the child Clicker that took down Kathleen there was a creative liberty just to make that scene more horrific and scary, or if this is what they want to do with Clickers, where they want to have humans converted over to being Clickers based on where they're captured. So if a child is made into an infected, that infected can be a child Clicker, if that makes sense. It seems to be what they're going for here. So I'll be interested to see if that ends up being just like a one-off, or if we're going to see different ages of infected like that based on what age their human host is. Another observation I made as well was near the end there with the super infected. You heard it roar towards the end, just as Joel, Ellie, Sam, and Henry were making their escape through the fence at the back of the housing development. You heard the super infected roar. All of the infected immediately scurried away based on the direction that the super infected was going. So they definitely are being respectful to the fact that super infected, they want those to be like the leaders or the top tier of the infected. It'll be interesting to see now whether Clickers have any command over runners, because as I said, you have those three tiers. Clickers and runners generally don't have that kind of interaction with each other, but the TV show has got this whole network thing going on where you have the cordyceps growing underneath the ground like weeds, and it's like a hive mind that communicates with all infected at the same time. So did the super infected command all of the infected to leave the area there, or was the cordyceps making the decision to leave the area and the super infected just happened to be roaring at the same time as everybody leaving? You know, it could have been a cordyceps command went out there and there wasn't actually anybody in control. It was just like a hive mind decision to leave the area. Then we come to the rough part of the episode, and I say rough from the kindest of places, in that it was a beautifully done scene, and it was not rough because it was bad. It was rough because it was difficult viewing. So again, I knew everything that was going to be happening here. Sam got infected as a result of what happened in the suburbs, and he revealed his bite to Ellie. Ellie made the decision to cut herself and treat his infection with her blood, because she's been led to believe by Marlene that she is a cure for the infection and the outbreak, and that's why she's being rushed across the city to the Fireflies. So it seemed like she wanted to help, or at least that she wanted to portray that she wanted to help to Sam, but I kind of got the impression that she knew deep down that that's not how it works, and you can't, like, even if your blood has antibodies, you can't just slice yourself open and put your blood over somebody else's wound and everything is okay. I think what she wanted to do there was just to try and reassure that a young kid who was scared that there was nothing to be scared of, and that he should go to sleep and get some rest. A dark way of doing it, but it worked, and Sam was able to rest as a result of Ellie's interaction with him there. Beautiful, lovely scene between them. The fact that Sam was hearing impaired and had to communicate to Ellie using the magnetic pad, and the fact that Ellie communicated backwards with him using the same pad. Just a really, really heart-wrenching scene. Just knowing in your mind that Sam is dying, but also watching this beautiful scene between two friends play out at the same time was just heart-crushing. Then when you had the two men next door, Joel and Henry, you had this lovely scene between them as well, where Henry taught Joel about endure and survive. I thought that was really nice because it's Ellie who teaches Joel about endure and survive and about the importance of Ellie's comics to her, and she teaches him the phrase, and then he uses it back as a survival phrase to her later, and it becomes their thing between them. So the fact that a character we don't know teaches one of our main characters this phrase when we know it to belong to somebody else that's special to us, I thought that was really, really nice. Really, really good touch there. The decision to take the creativity of that phrase and give it to this unknown character and have that unknown character teach Joel it. Love that. Love that. So then we come to the downsides. This was the first week that I felt we actually could feel the time constraints a lot more. It felt like they wanted to do a huge amount in this one episode and had barely enough time to do it. Like, I knew as soon as they went downstairs from Henry and Sam's lair down to instantly being in the maintenance tunnels and then just getting to the suburbs within like 2 minutes, it was evident to me at that point like how rushed they were in trying to cover everything. You got to remember as well that this is episode 5 of 9, so you've only got 4 episodes left to tie up this whole journey, and this was definitely the first episode of the 5 that I felt it was actually rushed, like as in they were going too quickly for what I felt the story deserved, the pacing of the story to be. I would have made the decision here to introduce another episode about Henry and Sam. I think you had 2 great young guys here who were tremendous actors, and although they got a chance to shine brightly in the limited time that they had, I definitely think that there was enough content here in the journey from Kansas through the maintenance tunnels and the suburbs that you could have easily stretched that out across 2 episodes without making it feel bloated. You could have easily had them leave Kansas and get into the maintenance tunnels and had events in the maintenance tunnels stop halfway through there, and then next week have them get out of the maintenance tunnels into the suburbs, have the encounter with the sniper, and still ended up the same way. And you would have had 2 great episodes there and got to use those 2 great actors a lot more than what you actually did. And obviously you could have done more stuff then with Kathleen and Perry as well. It wasn't what they ended up going with, and I appreciate that this is a brand new show as well. There was probably a lot of reservations about whether this would end up being popular. There was no way of knowing when making this show that this was going to end up being as hugely popular and successful as what it actually is now, and I can definitely understand that they were given these 9 episodes to work with and had to try and cram everything in. So with what we have left, 4 episodes, you're not talking about a great amount of time left. Like, you gotta remember, Joel hasn't caught up with his brother yet, so we should, time-wise, run into Tommy next week, I reckon. And So that'll be what, episode 6? Yeah, I would say episode 6 will be Run It to Tommy, and episodes 7 and 8 will belong together, and episode 9 will tie everything up then. There's not a lot I can say there. I do react here rather than a prediction and spoils, and I don't want any secret first time Last of Us fans who are watching the show for the first time and don't really know the games to be watching this channel and then have the story spoiled for them. So I don't want to say too much there, but I'm confident that anybody who knows the storyboard of the game knows why I said the grouping of the episodes the way that I did there and what I'm nodding towards. Please don't go into detail in the comments. I would love people to be posting comments and posting what you think about the episode, about my react, and what you're enjoying about it and what you're looking forward to, but don't spoil the show for people, please. I that's the one thing that I ask every Last of Us fan or every Last of Us viewer who has seen the games. We all have a lot of knowledge in our heads. Let's keep it there. Let's respect the fact that people are new to the TV show, and let's not spoil things for them. There's a lot of exciting story events coming, especially in the next couple of weeks, and I want people to experience those on their own for the first time. So that's it. That was episode 5, Endure and Survive. I hope you have enjoyed this react, and I apologize that it's taken me so long to get back on track and catch up with the pacing, but we're here now. I've managed to catch up with the show, and we're ready now for episode 6 next week. If you enjoyed this react, as always, please let me know what you enjoyed, what you're looking forward to, and any comments that you have about this react episode or any of my past ones. And drop me a like and a subscription. It'd be great to hear from you again as we look forward to episode 6. And I will see you again next time. Endure and survive.
Good night, kiddo.